Are you ever too old to learn jazz or a musical instrument? This is actually something that I think more people worry about than probably what they let on. It's whenever I'm getting an email from a student, then age is always mentioned, and I think that people mention age for a reason. They're obviously kind of conscious about it, and I think at the back of everyone's mind, when you get older and things like that, then obviously things change, and you might be thinking, can you still learn jazz or music or an instrument when you're older? Now, at the time of recording this, I've been teaching professionally for 12 years, and I've had a massive kind of range of students really over that time in my career as an educator, from literally 4 or 5 year olds all the way up to 70, 80 year olds. So there's a few things that I've learned, and a few things that I think I might be able to share. If you're watching this and you're kind of worried about this, then hopefully I've got a kind of a few points that might be helpful or that might be motivational if you're kind of thinking you might be too old to learn jazz. So let's get into them. Just before we begin the video, I'd like to tell you about a free beginner jazz guitar course which I have available for anyone that is new to learning jazz guitar. I've put this jazz guitar course together to break down jazz guitar in a coherent and structured way. There are over 25 4K video lessons and a 40-page downloadable PDF to help you get started. Each module comes with downloadable PDFs, chord diagrams, etudes and studies to help you get started learning the wonderful art of jazz. Before I get into these, remember that these are all majorities, and there's always exceptions to the rule. So if you feel like you're kind of on the worser end of any of these, don't feel like you should give up. There's always exceptions, which I'll get into as I go through each point. So the first point here is that it is generally a lot easier to learn jazz, or indeed any musical genre, if you've been playing your main instrument for at least a couple of years prior to learning jazz. Now, like I said, there's always exceptions. There's one student that I teach at the minute who's in his 50s who only learned to play the guitar 2 years ago, and he picked it up really well, and he could progress to learning kind of a few jazz standards and stuff. So there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, if you've been playing the guitar for a while, even if you've just kind of been playing kind of basic solos, or you're kind of not too confident about your abilities, as long as you can kind of strum chords in time and you can do basic kind of blues pentatonic improvisation, there really shouldn't be too much of a problem really. As long as you're kind of at least an intermediate guitar player, then I think that when you're learning jazz after a certain age, it really is not going to be so much of an obstacle, because the techniques and mechanics are already there really. So that's a definite positive in my opinion. Another positive fact is that, if you are learning guitar at a later stage in life, then you often have more time and, less responsibilities generally, so you can dedicate more focus on the guitar. If you're a little bit younger and you're kind of more focused on work, family, etc., you just simply don't have the time, or the priority is quite low. It's not to say you can't do it in those situations, because there are people that do. However, the main thing to kind of really think about is that when you're deciding to learn an instrument at a certain age, then it's because you have more time and more focus to be able to do that. So it's a really beautiful and wonderful privilege, especially if you can do it first thing in the morning, if you can get up every day and practice, then that is kind of a really good thing. You can really focus on these things and get them down. Whereas, if you're kind of learning guitar at a younger age, then unless you're very focused and very disciplined, you tend to learn things haphazardly here and there. Whereas if you can kind of get into a regular practice routine, that will often see the biggest results, generally speaking. Another point is to enjoy and embrace the journey. So it's not about the destination, it's about learning to enjoy each step of the way. And I think that's a very important point to consider, because you definitely do improve and you can progress, but sometimes for certain students the journey can be a little bit slower, but it's better to make the journey going one footstep a day rather than just be stationary, right? So you have to embrace and enjoy that. And sometimes, especially as you get older, it is that I guess there's two sides to it. Number one, it is harder to improve the technique. I think now, after playing guitar for 20 odd years, well, I do feel like I do improve. You kind of get to one level, and then the other kind of mini bits of progress tend to be smaller, generally speaking. So I think maybe you're not going to be able to play fast double time licks like John Coltrane, or you're not going to have the technique of some of the players that you might want to do, but you should enjoy, embrace what you can do, really. You should really focus on being musical, having quality of notes, which is good for any age, but I think especially if you are learning to play later and you've got a lot of kind of set habits with the guitar already, they do tend to be harder to break. They're harder to break even if you're younger and you've been on them for a year or two, but if you've been playing the guitar for 10 or 20 years and you want to try and reverse something or rapidly change your technique, it does become harder. So it's much easier to just embrace those things and play on your strengths rather than focus on your weaknesses. A lot of this really comes down to mindset as well, and basically being able to embrace things with a smile and not worry so much about kind of making mistakes, which is, to be honest, that's probably the biggest factor that I've seen when I've been teaching a teenager or even maybe a young kid versus an older student. And of course this is generalizing as well, because that there could be some younger kids like this and some older students with much better mindsets, but generally speaking, what I've seen from my experience as a teacher is that if a younger student makes a mistake, then they'll not feel so insecure about it. They'll just kind of get on with it. That sometimes they don't even care. Sometimes worryingly that they just make a mistake and they're not even aware it's a mistake. However, having that mentality kind of just makes them able to kind of plow on through things more and embrace kind of the process of learning. That they're not as kind of in their own mind, whereas I've taught some older students where I think maybe they can become more anxious or more insecure about things, where honestly the best thing to do is to really kind of remove all the emotions when you're kind of, all the negative emotions when you're learning, and just really kind of embrace that something might be challenging. We've all done this kind of thing where or we may have all seen it, where they play a wrong note and, oh, I'm really sorry about that, or oh dear, or making a big deal out of not being able to do something. And quite simply, I've actually timed this in lessons once, where I've had two students in a group or something like that, and two similar level ability students, and I will give them a similar difficulty task, and the one which basically will just kind of keep on trying and keep on playing and not stop and have a mini breakdown will get through it, whereas the other one who has similar ability, if they just kind of, I can't do this, or I can't do that, by the time they've had a couple of breakdowns, the other person's got it. So it really is better just to kind of get on with it, really. It's much easier said than done, but it's a big thing that I see all the time, whereas young students are just keen to get playing as much as possible, and there's often in their lessons there's kind of very little talk, very little small talk. They just want to get on it, they want to get playing, they want to get progressing, whereas the older students tend to want to talk more, sometimes it is as a distraction, but you'll for the most part have much more progress if you just kind of learn to get playing as much as possible and enjoy the feedback and enjoy the journey, rather than just kind of thinking that you'll be happy once you get to a certain level or a certain amount of progress has been made. The last point to consider is that it never really is too late to get started with this. I'll never forget many years ago, probably one of the first students I had early on in my career was in his 70s, and he said he would have wished that he would have started playing guitar in his 50s, and someone in the 60s once said, I wish I'd have done it when I was in my 40s, or this, that, or the other. We're all at different places, really, so it doesn't matter if you're 80, 90, 70. If you can learn it and it can bring you joy and happiness, and you can get involved in creating music, then it doesn't really matter when you do it, but it's never too late. That's the thing, right? If you just enjoy it and embrace it, then I think it's something that will enrich your life, and it's certainly worth pursuing no matter what level or what age you're at. So I hope this video helps you out. If you found it useful, please subscribe to this channel and click like, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.